Dear finance professionals and students, welcome to podcast of FCA Deepak Rao, a practicing chartered accountant. Weekly digest for week 2 of July 2025. Fintech startup Navi Limited, co-founded by Flipkart co-founder Sachin Bansal, is preparing to file for an initial public offering by the March quarter of 2026-27 to raise rupees 3,000 crore. The issue is likely to include fresh capital and an offer for sale, though the split is yet to be finalized. The Bengaluru-based company is working with Kotak Investment Banking for the IPO. Colgate-Palmolive India is prioritizing rural market expansion, innovation, and digital transformation to boost growth. The company aims to reach more rural households and introduce science-backed products in urban areas. With a focus on data analytics and AI, Colgate-Palmolive is enhancing its value chain and strengthening its presence across all retail channels. Despite facing challenges, the company anticipates continued momentum driven by an improving demand environment and strong execution. Premier Energies is set to invest rupees 6,000 crore over 3 years to establish ingot and wafer manufacturing capabilities, aiming for full integration in India's solar sector. This move aligns with government policy mandating domestic production of these components from 2028. The company's broader rupees 12,500 crore capex plan also includes expanding cell and module capacity and venturing into inverters, batteries and transformers. Adani Enterprises defense arm Adani Defence and Aerospace has announced an investment of rupees 2,500 crore to set up what it calls South Asia's largest private sector missile manufacturing ecosystem in Shivpuri, Madhya Pradesh. The company said the project will help strengthen India's defense supply chain by combining the production of critical minerals with missile system integration at a single location. This is expected to support the large-scale induction of indigenous missile systems by the Indian Armed Forces. Global Capability Centers or GCCs in India are presently witnessing a sizable boom. Figures posted by CII, NASSCOM and Deloitte via its latest report titled India's Strategic GCC Play for Japanese Enterprises confirms the same. India's GCC sector, which had a direct gross value added contribution of around $68 billion in financial year 25, could grow nearly 2.6 times to $155 to $199 billion by financial year 30, the report said, citing NASSCOM's GCC ecosystem estimates. This is important because unlike revenue, which simply reflects the total amount charged by the GCC to the company headquarters, which can include software and other intermediary costs, gross value added measures net economic wealth that's been directly created by GCC in India by subtracting intermediate costs such as vendor payments, software, cloud, real estate and other purchase services. The National Stock Exchange or NSE is planning to launch Quanto Cross-Currency Derivatives or Quanto Derivatives and has sought approval from the Reserve Bank of India for the same according to the draft red herring prospectus filed with Securities and Exchange Board of India for its initial public offering. A Quanto derivative is a financial contract that enables investors to take exposure to the exchange rate between two foreign currencies such as the euro against the US dollar or the UK pound sterling against the dollar without directly assuming exchange rate risk in the settlement currency. It tracks the movement of a foreign currency pair while profits and losses are settled in a predetermined currency under a fixed conversion mechanism. Mahindra and Tata Motors are adopting distinct electric vehicle strategies for India's growing market. Mahindra focuses on premium e-SUVs and profitability, planning 6 new models by financial year 31. Tata Motors targets broader scale with a wider product range and powertrain options. Tata aims for EVs to be 30% of its passenger vehicle sales. Analysts are divided on which company's approach will yield greater shareholder value. Indian banks are significantly reducing their reliance on short-term debt sales known as certificates of deposit or CDs. This shift is driven by the Reserve Bank of India's initiative to attract foreign currency deposits, offering a cheaper and more stable funding alternative. Lenders anticipate this trend to continue, impacting CD rates and strengthening their balance sheets with more durable capital. German auto parts giant Webasto is eyeing a $400 to $500 million IPO for its Indian unit by 2027, aiming to capitalize on India's booming car market, especially for sunroofs. The company, which supplies major automakers, is expanding its manufacturing capacity with a new facility in Haryana. Webasto Roof Systems India saw significant revenue and profit growth in financial year 25, reflecting strong market demand and strategic investments. The Reserve Bank of India's Financial Stability Report showed that the ratio of write-offs relative to bad loans for private banks was more than double that for public sector banks. Although state-owned lenders accounted for 63.2% of the total non-performing assets. Private banks utilize these write-offs and provisioning buffers to proactively clean up their balance sheets, while public sector banks generally rely more heavily on aggregate long-term or systematic recovery. CultFit filed its draft red herring prospectus with SEBI for an initial public offering. The issue comprises a fresh equity share sale of up to Rs 950 crore and an offer for sale of up to 178.6 million shares by existing investors, potentially taking the total IPO size near Rs 4,000 crore. The funds raised will be primarily used for expanding and maintaining fitness centers, lease and rental payments, branding and marketing expenses. The company's core operations remain focused on its 700 plus physical centers while also integrating at-home workouts and fitness products. Online rental and subscription platform Rentomojo Limited has received SEBI's go-ahead for its proposed initial public offering. The proposed IPO comprises a fresh issue of equity shares aggregating up to Rs 150 crore and an offer for sale of 2.84 crore equity shares by existing shareholders. Rentomojo operates a technology-driven direct-to-consumer online rental and subscription platform for furniture and home appliances. Indian stock markets experienced a decline on Wednesday as oil prices surged. Benchmark indices Sensex and Nifty fell significantly due to renewed Iran-US conflict escalations. Broader market indices also slipped into the red, reflecting widespread bearish sentiment. Foreign investors, however, continued their buying trend for a fifth consecutive session. The Indian rupee opened lower against the US dollar amid these developments. SBI Funds Management, India's largest asset manager, will draw investments from Abu Dhabi Investment Authority and Singapore's GIC as part of its $1.2 billion initial public offering. It is expected to be valued at around $12.3 billion, the sources said, with SBI and Amundi selling a collective 10% of the shares in the joint venture as part of the issue. The IPO, likely to open next week, will kick off a busy pipeline of public offerings for India in the second half of the year, with Reliance Jio and National Stock Exchange mega listings expected before the end of 2026. India's office market posted record leasing in the first half of 2026 as multinational companies expanded global capability centers and flexible workspace operators signed larger deals despite geopolitical uncertainty, property consultant CBRE said. India's office sector absorbed 45.5 million square feet of space, equivalent to nearly 400 football pitches in the first half of 2026, the highest ever for any 6-month period, up 9.6% from a year earlier. The home services platforms are increasingly betting on at-home beauty as a next growth engine, shifting focus beyond repair and maintenance services to a category that offers higher repeat usage, standardized delivery, and opportunities to deepen customer relationships. No Broker's recent foray into the segment signals intensifying competition in a market where users typically book services once or twice a month and repeat rates are estimated at around 50% according to industry estimates. No Broker recently launched its beauty services brand Zivora in Bengaluru, joining category leader Urban Company and newer entrant Snabit in the space. The Securities and Exchange Board of India has notified changes to the Foreign Portfolio Investors or FPI regulations, shifting to a rupee-denominated payment structure instead of the current US dollar-denominated fee for foreign portfolio investors and foreign venture capital investors. The changes will come into effect after 6 months, giving the foreign entities time to make the shift. Indian microfinance lenders are facing renewed strains on their portfolios as price pressures and weak monsoon threaten rural incomes, raising the risk of defaults across the industry's $35 billion loan book. A weak monsoon could slow loan growth as lenders tighten underwriting standards and borrowers' repayment capacity deteriorates. About 20% of microfinance borrowers have loans from more than 2 lenders, and this segment has begun posting much higher delinquency rates than borrowers with few lending relationships. The Asian Development Bank has lowered India's financial year 27 GDP growth forecast to 6.6%. Elevated energy prices are impacting household purchasing power and squeezing real incomes. The lender also raised India's financial year 27 inflation forecast to 5.2%. South Asia's growth projection for 2026 was also reduced by 0.3 percentage points. Risks to the growth outlook remain tilted to the downside due to geopolitical tensions. Auto tech platform CarDeco's parent Girnar Software is preparing to file draft papers for an initial public offering in the July to September quarter, targeting an issue size of up to Rs 3,000 crore. The IPO is expected to be largely an offer for sale by existing shareholders, with a fresh issue of about Rs 300 crore. The Jaipur-based company is eyeing a valuation of around Rs 13,000 crore as per early discussions with investment bankers. This would be higher than its last private valuation of Rs 9,000 crore when it had raised Rs 1,900 crore in primary capital around 5 years ago. India's technology and software services sector is likely to eliminate up to 35,000 jobs this calendar year as companies sharpen focus on productivity gains in an intensely competitive market. Between 10,000 and 15,000 tech professionals face so-called silent layoffs till May, according to staffing firm Teamlease, which projects the full year toll at 25,000 to 35,000. Honda Motorcycle and Scooter India, the two-wheeler arm of Japan's Honda Motor Co., expects to create over 3,800 jobs in India as it expands overall annual production capacity to 8 million units by 2028. With India increasingly becoming an important part of Honda's global manufacturing and export strategy, its production capacity is designed not only to cater to domestic demand but also to support growing international markets. India has emerged as the world's largest hub for retail and FMCG global capability centers or GCCs, with 180 GCCs employing about 272,300 professionals. The country's retail GCC market is now 34% larger than those of Poland, the Philippines, Mexico, Germany and Egypt combined. India also leads its peers in artificial intelligence adoption, with AI penetration at 5 to 7% of the retail GCC workforce. This puts it ahead of every other major market, including Germany. US-based insurance and financial services company Nationwide has opened its first India Global Capability Center or GCC in Hyderabad, marking the company's first international campus as it expands its global operations. The Hyderabad-based entity, Nationwide Global Services Center Private Limited, will support the company's engineering, digital, technology and business capabilities under a 24/7 global operating model aimed at improving agility, decision-making and innovation. Ford Business Solutions or FBS India, the Global Capability Center or GCC arm of automotive major Ford Motor, has launched a new center at Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu. This is the company's third center in India after large operations in Chennai and a smaller center in Bengaluru that it opened recently. The 800-seater center in Coimbatore will predominantly house the company's accounting, financing, Ford Credit and other business operations. Indian Oil Corporation's expansion will boost refinancing capacity by December 2026. This increase is expected to significantly raise India's petroleum product export share. The company's capacity will reach 98.05 million metric tons per annum. This expansion will strengthen India's position as a global refining hub. Increased exports will also boost the nation's foreign exchange earnings. RBI faces a challenge unwinding its large bearish dollar bets. The central bank has begun trimming its massive short dollar forward position. This unwinding must be carefully managed to avoid currency market destabilization. Recent measures aim to attract foreign capital and support the rupee. Forecasters predict continued pressure on the Indian currency for the year. India aims to lead global capability centers and the world's knowledge economy. The nation now hosts over half of the world's GCCs, which is significant. India's focus shifts from scale to enabling innovation and shaping future technologies. Enterprises are prioritizing innovation and long-term competitiveness over cost reduction. The government is creating an enabling policy ecosystem for future GCC growth. Nissan India targets 2 lakh annual car sales, balancing domestic and export volumes. The company plans to introduce new products and increase localization efforts. Nissan India is expanding its portfolio with new models like the Tecton SUV. This strategy aims to cater to both Indian and international markets effectively. The company is also investing in new manufacturing capabilities and brand promotion. Specialty coffee chain Blue Tokai plans to triple its store count to 800 by financial year 30. The company aims to open 120 new cafes this financial year. Blue Tokai is also in discussions to raise at least $100 million in funding. Revenue is expected to grow by over 50% to Rs 8 billion this year. The firm anticipates becoming profitable by March 2028. SEBI has revised the framework for handling clients' unpaid securities to streamline the process followed by trading members where clients fail to meet their payment obligations. Under the revised framework for non-margin trading facility or non-MTF trades, securities will be credited to the client's demat account and automatically pledged in favor of the trading member's client unpaid securities pledgee account. This mechanism ensures that the securities remain linked to the client and secures the trading member's exposure until the payment obligation is fulfilled. India's Apollo Microsystems will acquire a 41.33% stake in defense equipment maker Premier Explosives for $162.50 million. Per India's takeover regulations, Apollo Microsystems will also offer to buy up to an additional 26% stake in Premier Explosives from public shareholders at 698 rupees per share. Consolidations have risen in India's fast-growing defense manufacturing sector, which has benefited from increased government spending and a push for local production. Premier Explosives, which manufactures high-energy materials, rocket motors, countermeasures, and munitions for the defense and aerospace sectors, will continue to operate under its existing brand after the acquisition. India and New Zealand established a strategic partnership aiming for enhanced cooperation. They adopted a 2030 roadmap to guide joint actions over the next 4 years. Both nations agreed to double bilateral trade to 7 billion New Zealand dollars by 2030. The leaders welcomed the signing of a comprehensive free trade agreement. Cooperation will expand across trade, agriculture, and innovation sectors. Shapoorji Pallonji Group secured significant funding through debt issuance. This refinancing effort attracted both domestic and global institutional investors. The company raised approximately Rs 21,500 crore in its initial funding tranche. Investors showed strong interest, with many participating for the first time. This move is part of a larger plan to replace higher cost debt. Indian Bank has cancelled its planned share sale to raise funds. The lender's expected credit loss impact is now estimated lower than previously calculated. This revised calculation means the bank will not need to raise additional capital. The bank's net profit rose 10% year-on-year in the fiscal first quarter. Gross advances and deposits also saw significant year-on-year growth. Bengaluru's housing market shows strong growth fueled by its expanding technology sector. Mumbai remains India's largest residential market, absorbing new supply effectively. Delhi NCR faces a slowdown as premium homes dominate its available inventory. These contrasting trends indicate future property cycles will depend on job and investment growth. Infrastructure development is increasingly shaping buyer decisions across these key cities. India's data center sector is poised to draw investments of nearly $90 billion by financial year 35 across construction, power, cooling, networking, and security infrastructure, according to a report released by KPMG in India this month, as the country's installed capacity is projected to expand roughly tenfold over the next decade on the back of artificial intelligence-driven demand. India currently accounts for only 2 to 3% of global data center capacity, despite generating close to a fifth of the world's data, the report noted, pointing to what it calls considerable headroom for domestic expansion. Roughly 90% of this capacity remains concentrated in Bengaluru, Chennai, Delhi NCR, and Mumbai, though the report also noted that Hyderabad, Pune, and emerging Tier 2 locations such as Visakhapatnam are gaining traction as land availability and state incentives push new projects beyond the traditional metro clusters. Milky Mist Dairy Food Limited is preparing to launch its Rs 2,035 crore initial public offering as early as this month, paving the way for what is expected to be India's largest dairy sector IPO. The Tamil Nadu-based company has completed investor roadshows and is aiming to open the share sale by the end of July or in early August. The IPO comes at a time when listed dairy companies have underperformed the broader market. Parag Milk Foods Limited has fallen 20% this year, while Dodla Dairy Limited has declined about 11%. Hatsun Agro Product Limited has slipped 7.5% since the start of the year.
This podcast is sponsored by Sound of CA. We share because we care. Vande Mataram, Jai Hind.